Hey YouTube, this is Dr. Ryan Somerville, and this is part 3 of my discussion with Alan McLaughlin, Jake Lazarowitz, and Nigel Osborne into the making of my orchestral music experience, Novo. In this part, we speak more with Alan to learn about his approach to filming Novo and more about his experimentation in cinematography and his pursuits into AI art creation. Thanks for watching.
Work, I think of Alan. Alan has been like the guy who I always want to visualize my music with. When I see Alan's work, he kind of captures the grandiose world that I try to create with my music. And I've been equally inspired by his work.
Oh man, I don't know what to say. Yeah, it's been awesome. You know, I remember way back at the start when we met, and I was still at uni and still relatively fresh to everything. And it really solidified in my mind that I wanted to get involved a lot more with art and not just the sort of huge mechanism that the industry can be. And that's, I have to say, that's been pretty consistent like throughout my career so far. I've always been able to do something interesting or experimental while also doing all of the bigger jobs and, you know, the the more mechanized part of the industry. So yeah, it's been awesome. I've really enjoyed our collaborations over the years.
Because the first project you and I, Alan, had worked on was the Novo video with the performer in costume. If you could talk about some of the techniques, that maybe some cinematography techniques, because I thought you were doing some really interesting things. And I remember with lighting, I think lighting is always incredibly important. And you're always, I think you're such an expert, not just an expert, but like a true like visionary when it comes to coloring and lighting up a portion of the film. So maybe we could pick your brain a bit about that.
Yeah, there's a really good story, little anecdote. I met this guy a couple of years ago called Joe Dunton. He's a legend in cinema. He's been around for a long time, designed lenses for Kubrick and all sorts of amazing things. A real proper genius. And remember him answering a question someone had asked, which was, you know, how do you achieve this effect? And tried to get really technical and tried to like really overcomplicate the issue. And his answer against the hopes of the person asking the question was just buy a cheap lens and smash it, see what you end up with. And I thought, yeah, that's exactly it. That's the way that you need to approach these things. I think if you do make it too formulaic, then you end up trapping yourself into a pigeonhole where you're suddenly like trying to solve all the problems before you even know what they are. And I think there's just such a beauty in discovering a process like as you move through it organically. So when it comes to like lighting, it's like, all right, let's just try this. Let's, you know, and then if you have that emotional reaction to it, then it's working, and you know you're on the right path. And then as you keep sort of pushing down that path, you make little tweaks and adjustments, and you just start doing stuff. And I think as you guys were talking earlier, you know, boundary breaking and really sort of pushing to those limits is definitely been a huge success for this project. And then just thinking about sketches that we've done more recently with the whole AI creation thing, and you know, having AI generate a huge sequence of images, you don't really know what you're going to end up with, and then you trying to make a narrative out of that, or make some sort of narrative sense from it, is quite amazing. So I don't know, I think I do obviously appreciate the digital realm. I do appreciate what's happening, despite all my photography still being analog. And I think I think AI and the sort of the hugely rapid development of that over the last, like, let's say 5 years even, or even 2 years, has been amazing. And it's just as such, well, at the moment, I still consider it a really important creative tool. I don't think it's gone too far yet. You know, I don't think it's gone to the point of starting to fight against us. I think we're able to still use it and utilize it. And yeah, and then to sort of touch on this digital point, sort of keeping it in a digital realm, the whole physicality of a performance generates the emotional connection. So to have something on a device like gives you, it's always going to be that fourth wall. VR definitely immerses you a little bit extra, you know, it gives you that sort of extra step into that. But definitely still having, especially since after this whole year where the world's experienced, you know, this pandemic, there is a genuine thirst, there is a genuine drive in people to want to get back into these spaces and experience things physically. Yeah, I think we're all fed up of having these Zoom calls where we're not all physically together, you know, and we're all fed up of having these digital connections with each other. Like, you know, we all want a hug, we all want some sort of like physical embrace. And I think getting back to that after all of this stuff would be amazing. So yeah, don't trap it on digital. Definitely not.
It's funny that you say that, though, because that was kind of the feeling for me, at least. I was getting kind of sick of movies just telling me the story, like, this is the product, this is the story that you're going to get, and that's it, right? Like, you know, there's nothing more than that. And I think that's a good point, and that's also something that goes back to when we were first thinking about de novo and creating it. Was like, we don't want to just tell the audience the story. We want the audience to be involved, not necessarily from you know, speaking or being physically present in the story, but from their imagination, being able to you know, be fully engulfed in it.
Alan, again, I was going to follow up with this because Alan mentioned something about experimenting, and this is, I think we've all been experimenting quite a bit on this project. But I was wondering how you use these experimental techniques and like how these cross over into your other more commercial works. Like, how do you find how do you approach these different techniques? Like, how do you approach them differently, like with your artistic projects? Or
yeah, it's interesting. So I think it's just a philosophy that I tend to follow, which is, I always think of starting from a point of motivation, right? And then that motivation can literally be anything. It could be the motivation, either you want your audience to understand, or you're wanting to lead your audience in a certain path, or distract or display, or whatever it is. And then you've got the ability to obviously present something to them that's going to be in some level manipulative. Like, that's the whole thing, isn't it? The whole, I don't know, just talking about image-based media, it's the manipulative tool. And I think then to relate to that, you've got the sense that every single time you make a decision on what a frame's going to be, you're ordering chaos. I think that comes to what Nigel's talking about. Like, you know, the VR experience of going to a refugee camp is such a much more immersive experience, because suddenly the order of that chaos, you know, you can break the boundaries and you can actually look around you, and, you know, although it could all still obviously be a constructed reality, I think that we've become so used to having this sort of single point of focus, where it's, you know, from the theatrical world to being at one stage, one angle of viewing, to the cinematic world, where we've created a language where we're coming from like this wide and then showing emotion through close-ups and that relationship. So I think really having an understanding of what that is probably the starting point. of how you then break everything and really start to experiment with things. And so, yeah, for De Novo, it was just it was absolutely that. It was, how far can you push things before things start to break down completely beyond the point of actually being able to engage with them. And I don't know. I think it was really successful, and it is really successful. Because you're right. It's not a living thing at the moment. It's still sort of within this community of what we are. And as soon as it becomes that, as soon as it really becomes something like real to people, hopefully we can continue that thread. And yeah, I definitely in my own work have continued that thread of experimental inspiration, and just tried to like follow through that sort of process. And if you find something fun, find something interesting, then keep it as a little Easter egg for the future.
You had mentioned using the musician as the dramatic subject. And I thought that was an interesting way of putting it, because that to me sounds very kind of narrative-driven filmmaker perspective style. And then kind of coming back to what Jake was saying about creating like this own experience. When I was picturing a lot of this, and this did impact some of the music I was writing, is because when I was composing the music, I was visualizing how the players would move on stage and kind of choreographing the orchestra by writing the music. So I was still kind of determining how I was seeing it. My perspective, I was kind of almost imposing my perspective on the audience.
Yeah, totally. Like, I mean, if you go and watch an orchestra, yes, you're the composer. The music that they're playing is yours, but they are at some level conveying the emotion of the music. Like, as the audience, that's your window into what the composer was attempting to achieve, right? So they better be doing what you want them to be doing, or giving us the understanding that they're giving the audience a sense of what the world is. So yeah, I think that's what I meant, like a dramatic vehicle for sure. Like they are the narrative for the audience, absolutely.
It's also immersive too, because if you're watching an orchestra and you're distracted by what they're wearing versus what you're seeing either on the screen or elsewhere on the stage, it's going to break that feeling of immersion for you.
I mean, and that's exactly what we're trying to go for, especially with the set design and the costume, and then putting down sand and the sand down.
Oh yeah.
Which actually you couldn't really see at all. You couldn't see too much, but I don't know. I would have to get somebody somebody has no idea about this project to see it, because every time I see it now, I always just kind of remember the sandstorm that we made in the Reed concert hall.
Yeah.
Which I thought was amazing. But not so much fun to clean up, but it was a lot of it was really quite something special, I thought, adding that little bit of detail that isn't even necessarily seen on camera, but I think it's felt.
Totally. And I always buy into the world, and I guess this is maybe carried on from De Novo actually, which is if you create the environment for the performer, then everything falls into that. Thinking about shooting on stuff like green screen, thankfully we've got an amazing tool now that's pulling us away from green screen. We're actually able to shoot on digital sets, with these incredible backgrounds and environments. And as soon as you have an actor in a space where that exists, their understanding of what's happening just totally changes, and the level of their performance, becomes much more free and much more, sympathetic to what's actually around them physically.
Thanks for checking out the third and final part into the making of De Novo. Be sure to check out my channel for more De Novo videos, and thanks again for watching.